In today's world, when you get opposition into something, you know it's a spiritual battle, and you know you're doing something right. Well, this video that I'm going to make right now, I made it earlier, and I downloaded it, but it didn't get completely downloaded, and they still haven't completely downloaded it. You know, they keep waiting for me. Well, it's 95% done, but it's just enough to where they don't get it to where people can read it. And so I thought, well, I'll just make another one, and if they do it on this one, I'll just keep doing it until we get it done. And anyway, opposition is always a positive sign that you're doing something right, I think. So anyway, God bless all of you. Let me just start in on this. This is a public order, the timeline of the great fraud of the United States that they declared against the people of the United States, and that's a declaration of law. It starts out, number 1, 1754 to 1776. That's the years the United Colonies take shape as a loose political association, and the First and Second Continental Congress results. 1776, the colonies declare independence. Number 3 is 1781, the Article of Confederation binds the states, political subdivisions of the United Colonies, together into a perpetual union, creating a confederation of states to operate in the international jurisdiction of the sea. Why a confederation instead of a federation? Because the original states gave up some of their natural jurisdiction to the new political entity, the union they created. Number 4, 1783, the Treaty of Paris and the Treaty of Versailles cements this arrangement, splitting the land and the sea jurisdictions between the states and the federal union, and places King George III as trustee of American interest on the high seas and navigable inland waterways, which means he kept control of the American international commerce. The new union entity operating in the international jurisdiction of the sea was always controlled by the British, and it has always been the British monarch's responsibility as international trustee to manage it and guarantee its proper operation. It has instead run amok for 150 years. Number 5, 1787, the Supreme perfected Republican Declaration of the United Colonies creates the National Trust and the National Trust old the continental United States. 1789, 2 years later, the Constitution for the United States of America splits off the sea jurisdiction and creates the new federal United States. A year later, 1790, the federal United States forms a commercial company doing business as the United States Commercial Company to provide the 19 enumerated services agreed to by the subscribing states. Number 7, 1812 to 1814, the British try to horn in again and are beaten back. This skirmish results in the Treaty of Ghent, where the British interest in American shipping and commerce are reaffirmed and lasting peace is promised in return. 1845, the British monarch and Pope secretly agree to undermine the American system of government by the Treaty of Verona. The British monarch breaches the Treaty of Ghent, and both the Pope and the King secretly breach their trust as international trustees. They set out on a covert action and issued letters of marque and reprisal to the members of the Bar Association, allowing them to act as foreign agents on American soil and as privateers free to plunder American commerce. Number 9, 1860. Thanks to the efforts of the Bar Association, a member of the bar, Abraham Lincoln, is elected to serve as president. Note that he is ineligible to serve as President of the United States of America by the titles of nobility amendment to the actual Constitution, but is eligible to serve as President of the United States Commercial Company. That is the same situation we have with Barack Obama, who is ineligible to serve as President of the United States of America, but is able to serve as President of the United States Incorporated. Number 10, 1861. The Civil War begins. Congress adjourns for lack of quorum and without a date of reconveyance. Lincoln organizes a Delaware corporation, and the remaining members of Congress begin functioning as a board of directors. 1862, the Corporate Congress, a body of men no different than the board of directors of IBM, changed the meaning of one single word only, and explicitly for use within the corporation. The word is person. From then on, the word person is deemed to mean corporation. For federal government purposes, 37th Congress, 2nd Session, Chapter 49, Section 68. Number 12, 1863. Lincoln signs the Lieber Code as Commander-in-Chief and puts the Union Army, the Grand Army of the Republic, in charge of the nation's future money supply. A day later, he bankrupts the original United States Commercial Company. Number 13, 1865, Lee's army surrenders to Grant, and a general armistice is declared. The southern states are in ruins and under military occupation by the Union. The original northern states are bankrupt, foreign banks are in control of the new United States of America, Incorporated, and the Union Army reigns supreme. Over the next 2 years, President Andrew Johnson will 3 times publicly declare peace on the land jurisdiction of the constitutional United States, but peace is never declared in the international jurisdiction of the sea controlled by the federal United States under the trusteeship of the British monarch. Number 14, 1868. The Corporate Congress writes itself a new corporate constitution called the Constitution of the United States of America and palms off this look-alike, sound-alike private corporation document as if it were the actual Constitution. This is fraud on many levels. The Constitution of the United States of America purposefully sought to confuse and delude people into thinking it was the actual equity contract obligating states to receive services and subrogate their international jurisdictions to the federal government. Number 15, 1871. The Corporate Congress begins to set up shop for itself by creating a separate government for the District of Columbia. The initial effort fails, but 7 years later, the Washington, D.C. municipality is created as the independent international city-state as a plenary oligarchy by the members of Congress. Also in 1871, Corporate Congress claimed to own all of the United States corporations, 41st Congress, 3rd Session, Chapter 62, 63, and 64, and 65. Number 16, 1874 to 1885. All the actual states of the land are recognized, and at the same time, completely new federal states are created and new state constitutions are written for them. The original states on the land are renamed in this process. The original state of Ohio, operating the land of jurisdiction, became the Ohio state, while the usurping of the federal state, merely corporate franchise of the United States of America Incorporated, operating in the international jurisdiction of the sea, took over the name State of Ohio. Number 17, 1900 to 1904. Still lusting after more power for itself, the corporate Congress set up a second shop for itself and obtained permission to do it from the Supreme Court in a series of cases known as the Insular Tariff cases. And as with the setting up of the Washington, D.C. municipality as a foreign city state on our shores and running it as their own little oligarchy, the Congress now took the federal territories and possessions and made a new union of the American states. Puerto Rico, Guam, et al., and began calling it the United States of America Minor. They just forgot to add the minor part of the name from then on. Then and let people assume that all the repugnant laws that they passed governing the constitutional democracy also applied to the continental United States. Number 18, 1912 to 1913, a private association of European and American banks calling themselves the Federal Reserve bought the Governmental Services Corporation, known as the United States of America Incorporated, and its state franchises as a business venture, and began operating such familiar agencies as the United States Department of Agriculture, the United States Department of Transportation, as private for-profit businesses without telling anyone. They exercised the government powers they didn't really possess in a vast fraud scheme in collusion with members of Congress to institute a fiat monetary system and misused their position of trust to put competitors out of business, set up monopolies, rig commodity markets, and commit other acts of blatant, self-interested criminality and fraud. Number 19, 1917, engaging in a war for profit, Congress and their banker bosses passed the War Powers Act and the Trading with the Enemy Act and numerous other illegal and repugnant acts pertaining only to the federal United States and the international jurisdiction of the sea, but presented them to the public as if this claptrap pertained to the actual states and the people of the land of the continental United States. Deceived by this venal and purposeful fraud, millions of Americans complied with what they believed to be the law passed by a legitimate Congress acting as deputies of the states and the people. Number 20, 1918 to 1933. Once in control of the monetary system, the Federal Reserve increased the monetary supply exponentially, causing the Roaring Twenties. They built the House of Cards, and on October 29, 1933, they collapsed it deliberately. This enabled them to put thousands of competitors out of business, allowed them to buy commodities, land, and labor for dirt cheap, and manipulated the value of the dollar to their benefit. 1933 to 1940, the banks took full advantage of the national emergency they created, and the Congress did everything the bankers required. This Shepherd Tower Act, the Buck Act, the Alien Registration Act, and the Social Security Acts, the Emergency Banking Act, and more. The purpose of all this was to lay claim to the labor and the assets of the United States and people to the continental United States by securing private contracts with them, enabling the perpetrators to represent them and to set up corporations in their names. Hundreds of millions of Americans were told that they had to sign up for Social Security and have a Social Security number in order to have a job. That it was the law of that Congress that had been passed, and so believing it to be a lawful government mandate when in fact it was a corporate fraud scheme. They were subscribed as mass. Remembering now the actions of the corporate Congress in 1862, retaining the word person to mean corporation for federal purposes, and their later claim made in 1871 to hold ownership interests in all United States corporations, and seeing that their actions from 1933 to 1940 resulted in redefining the estates of living Americans as public trust, that is, as a form of corporation. You can see that the corporate Congress has claimed to own living Americans as assets belonging to their corporation, and has also claimed to control and own their private assets in flagrant violation of the Geneva Convention Protocols, Volume 2, Article 3, and an equally flagrant violation of the 1926 International Conventions on Slavery, and in violation of every lawful moral duty, commercial contract, and trust indenture owned to the continental United States and the American people. Owed to the continental United States and the American people. It is also apparent that all of this, every claim, every salvage lien, every title to land and property held under color of the law being held against the continental United States and the living civilian inhabitants of the continental United States, is pure self-interested commercial fraud created and perpetrated under conditions of semantic deceit, constructing fraud, misrepresentation, and mischaracterization by management of the federal United States, the various governmental services corporations doing business as some form of United States and the British government. Number 20, 1940 to the present. Among the first actions to be taken by the criminals was to register all live births. This established a claim of ownership on the baby and his or her estate, benefiting the state of Ohio or other federal state franchise. This act of identity theft, exercised by an undisclaimed and forced contract with the mother of the child, allowed each state franchise to control the name of the property of the baby. The perpetrators promptly set up new state franchises benefiting themselves using names styled like this: Joseph Quincy Public, and new municipal franchises set up under the auspices of Washington, D.C. municipality, using names styled like this: John Quincy Public. The only purpose for creating these franchises structured as various kinds of trusts was to act as means for the privately owned governmental services corporations to hypothecate debt against the labor of the living people and their private property assets, and to exercise control over them, amounting to slavery declaration of law. The instigators kidnapped and press-ganged the people and the land assets of the continental United States by force, fraud, and deceit into the foreign international jurisdiction of the sea. Our own employees did this while taking a paycheck from our hand, and they cannot claim that they were at war with us. They were merely criminals committing fraud against their benefactors and employers. The members of Congress stand notified that they do not represent the continental United States nor the people of the continental United States. They have not occupied their lawful public office and have acted instead to occupy private, similarly named corporate offices as both the federal and the state levels. They have no public capacity whatsoever and no valid contract obligating any American state citizen to obey the law, code, treaty, regulation, or other legislation promoted by an act of Congress. And while failing to occupy public office and failing to act as responsible fiduciary officers, the members of Congress stand further notified that they and the corporations they represent have no lawful contract with any individual American state, citizen born of the land of the continental United States, and that all claims, liens, titles, presumptions against the living people and their assets on the land stand null and void ab initio for fraud, all the way back to April of 1862. The members of Congress stand further notified that as presently constituted and operating, they have no public authority related to the continental United States and exercise only the power any corporate entity has, as long as it acts lawfully and within the charter, which is to say, the authority to organize their actual employees, set standards for behavior within their own corporation, and perform the functions stipulated by their charters and law-abiding commercial contracts. The governors of the federal state franchises are similarly notified and placed under public lien, required to release all color and of law titles and liens registered under conditions of fraud against continental United States assets. The Joint Chiefs of Staff stand notified that they are obligated under the Geneva Convention Protocols of 1949, as well as the Constitution for the United States of America, to come to the aid and assistance of the civilian populace of the continental United States to protect the civilian population and its assets at all costs, and prosecute those who have willingly violated Volume 2, Article 3 of the Geneva Convention Protocols, seeking to change the birthright, citizenship, nationality of American state citizens of the continental United States by fraud, force, and coercion. The Joint Chiefs are also under obligation to return all civilian property, unharmed and unencumbered, to the rightfully civilian owners, to remove all color of law titles and false liens against the labor and other private property assets of American state citizens rightfully belonging to the land jurisdiction of the continental United States. The Joint Chiefs are fully and hereby notified that no commercial corporation on earth has the lawful ability to declare war, and that the actions engaged in by the Congress and the President are merely the actions of a private corporation engaged in police actions and mercenary activities that must be clearly scrutinized for the conference to international military law and with due respect for the actual Constitution for the United States of America and the citizenry of the continental United States. President Barack Obama is merely given notice that he is merely an executive officer of a private, mostly foreign-owned, for-profit governmental services corporation, not a head of state, nor eligible to represent the people of the continental United States, and not empowered to obligate them to any military action or commercial contract. Any attempt on the part of Barack Obama or members of Congress to attack American state citizens using commercial mercenary forces, MHS, BATF, NSA, FEMA, FEMA, CIA, DIA, IRS, and etc., is to be immediately countered with arrest of those responsible. The Secretary of the Treasury and the Internal Revenue Service are under public lien and demand to unblock all civilians' public trust accounts and make available the entire balance of the national credit, an amount equal to the national debt plus principal and interest, for the use of the investment of the individual Americans without constraint, excuse, or further obfuscation. The public declaration establishes irrevocable lien upon the assets of the United States Treasury and the International Monetary Fund and all subsidiary and successors of the former Federal Reserve System, upon all federal state franchises. The Secretary General and General Secretary of the United States of the United Nations are both notified and given fair warning. And notice that the Federal Reserve and the United States of America, two corporations recently organized under the auspices of the United States, willfully seeking to defraud the living inhabitants of these peaceful states and to exercise unlawful control over the citizenry of their assets. The North American Water and Power Alliance is under public lien and is herein identified as the recipient of prolonged credit owed to the continental United States and the citizenry thereof, due and owing, and is under demand to unblock all individual capital credit accounts for the use of the American state citizen who have systematically defrauded and indebted, resulting in the establishment of these credit accounts in the names but retained in the control of the local utility companies and the NAWP. All fraudulent convertible debt resulting from the semantic deceits and misuse of deceptively similar names applied to people and illegal fiction entities is recognized as embezzlement of credit, willful identity theft, inland piracy, currency manipulation, obstruction of bankruptcy, as unlawful restraint of trade accomplished by personage and enforced by betray by perpetrators, and those schemes, whether foreign or domestic, the continental United States the right to prosecute claims against any and all legal fiction, estates, and the living people responsible, the right to void all contracts in default, all titles held under color of law, all actions undertaken under conditions of semantic deceit or constructive fraud, all self-interested claims of foreign immunity, all restrained of trade, of natural rights, and the citizenry of the continental United States, and all encroachments of its jurisdiction, to declare an order by the blank state Superior Court this blank day of April 2015, and sealed, judged, and negotiated signatures, all rights reserved. And so these are the blank places that will be filled out, and as this is filed. And everyone, pass this on to as many people as you can, and let's get to work and see what we can do with this. Let's change this world. Let's change the nation of the United States. God bless all of you, and thank you so much. Work hard now.